Hi there, my name is Jacob Palace, and I'm doing my visual riffing essay on Andy Warhol. And I'll start by giving some background on the art career of Andy Warhol and what led him into it. Andy Warhol was born August 6, 1928, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. 20 years later, he graduated with a degree in graphic design from Carnegie Tech. Now, very soon after he graduated with his degree, he landed a job at Glamour, becoming one of the most commercially successful artists of the 1950s. He debuted his concept of pop art in 1961, and a year later in 1962, debuted his Campbell's Soup Can paintings, becoming what would be one of the most popular and innovative paintings of the entire pop art movement. Soon after, he opened his New York art studio, The Factory, in 1963, and the downturn of Andy Warhol's art career started when he was shot by Valerie Solanas, a groupie at the factory. To the point, these injuries that he sustained from the gunshot were so serious to the point where he was pronounced dead on the operating table, but luckily was able to be revived. Now, like I said, this started the downturn of his art career, and it was a very sharp decline. His love for art dried up in 1969, and very quickly after, the factory became much harder to get into and became uh, just a commercial mass production site, just pumping out portraits and pop art prints daily. Now, Andy Warhol's famous works include his pop art works, his portraits, including those of Marilyn Monroe, Elvis Presley, Elizabeth Taylor, and Mao Zedong. His Later on in his career, he got into to writing some books and films. We'll touch on those briefly. Now, his pop artworks are really what put Andy Warhol on the map, becoming one of the leaders of the movement with his works such as the Campbell's Soup Can and his Coca-Cola bottle paintings. Now, what these did was they took popular pieces of culture at the time, not as much the popularity of Campbell's Soup and Coca-Cola, but more the simplicity of those items, the popularity that they had in culture, and made them the centerpiece of high art. I think that Lester explains it the best when he talks about uh, that the key to understanding popular culture as a movement is that artist elevates the ordinary to a level of high aesthetic value. And I think that's the perfect way to describe what Andy Warhol was doing with his pop art movement in taking something as simple as a Campbell's chicken noodle soup can and he hand painted it and brought it into high art with such a simplistic piece. He brought it into high art and then turned it into a mass produced piece of society, which is really what he was trying to say when he created it, with Campbell's soup being such a mass produced thing, with Coca Cola being such a mass produced item that you can buy and sell so easily. He wanted to create art that was the same way, and that's what he did with his pop art pieces. And that could also be seen in his portraits, especially with his portrait of Marilyn Monroe. Now, the sad, dark truth that is behind his portrait of Marilyn Monroe is he didn't do it until after she committed suicide. And this gives it even more depth in seeing as how uh, it's not just a portrait of her. It's six portraits of her just mass produced in a line, creating almost a shallow view of her, leaving you to see her in six different ways all at the same time, and creating almost an oversaturation of her. Now, Andy Warhol was quoted as saying that he loved Hollywood, and he called the people of Hollywood plastic, and he said that he wanted to be plastic because they were plastic because they were a creation and they were a creation of perfection. And this is just showing how he created perfection and then was able to mass produce it just as Hollywood was looking to do, just as society and culture is looking to do. Now, with the rise of popularity in his work, he also opened up the Factory, which was his art studio in New York. And the Factory became more than just an art studio for him, it became a place uh, for all of the elite in New York to come and hang out and just be able to be creative, creating almost a carnival like scene until things really got weirder later on in his career, uh, which created a weird feeling in the Factory as well. Now, after the Solanas incident, the Valerie Solanas incident, he Andy Warhol decided he wanted to move into some different things, and he created books such as The Philosophy of Andy Warhol, and movies such as his movie Eat, where he films a man eating. Now, my photo riffing, I decided I was going to go off of the portraits that he made during his pop art movement, kind of going into the lipstick and peroxide palette and the simplification and mass production of society and people in society. I decided to look at it in the sense of, while I don't know anybody famous personally, I decided my roommate would be a perfect person for this because when you take someone and put them in a collage of pictures like Andy Warhol's style like this, it 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 simplifies it. It makes it beautiful because it's a simple person in a completely new sense. And I think through this project I gained much more of a sense of understanding in art style and much more appreciation for the things that Andy Warhol has done. And I think that this picture is a good almost homage to him. And I hope that I did a good way of showing that. Thank you. Here are links to what I've used. And thank you.